Hi guys, and welcome to my channel. This is the place where you get to know that learning geography is cool, is fun, and is simple. Today we are going to have a conversation on one of the jobs of geographers, and that is regionalization in geography. And I, Kwabena Frimpong, will walk you through this discussion. So, at the end of this discussion, you will understand what I mean by regionalization. And when I say understand, I mean you will really understand. And then we will also describe two types of regions used for spatial analysis. From there, we will conclude by discussing one method of delineating a region. So, let's get into it. Regionalization is the process of delineating regions or process of identifying regions. And regionalization may take several forms. And the form and the shape a region would take depends on the purpose. So if you are creating a region for developmental purpose, it's going to be different from a region created to assess or to describe the vegetation cover of a place. And it's also dependent on the criteria. So if we look at a place like Africa, a continent like Africa, Africa can be divided into different vegetation regions. At the same time, Africa can also be divided into regions the based on the sub-regions. So in that case, you're going to have West Africa, East Africa, and all that. And it's also dependent on the data available. This is very key. Supposing that due to the paucity of data, a place is classified as a densely populated region. But when the real facts comes to light and we get the real data that this is the actual number of people living in this area, the initial classification of that place as a densely populated region is going to change into a different type of region. So data is very key. Okay, so regionalization is an exercise in aggregation of small units having certain similar characteristics into larger units. And so we may have smaller units in Ghana, like Western Region, Central Region, Greater Accra, and Volta Region. And these areas share some characteristics. One of them is that they all share boundary with the coast. They are coastal regions, and they are also involved in fishing. So we can decide to classify these small units as what? Coastal regions. In that case, we are aggregating small units based on the homogeneity they share into a larger unit. Regionalization can also be the other way round. It can be the disaggregation of larger units, such as continents or countries, into smaller units. In this case, Africa is a large unit, but we want to split Africa into sub-regions. So here we are disaggregating Africa into smaller units such as West Africa, North Africa, South Africa, Central, and Eastern Africa. And so this job that geographers are doing is very relevant in our world today, because let's go back. After we create a region for coastal areas, it will become easy for us to identify problems associated with coastal areas and also help solve those problems. So let's say the government wants to allocate money to fishing communities and help them solve a certain challenge. Once we've been able to classify these places, Western, Central, Greater Accra, and Volta region as coastal areas which are also involved in fishing, that money meant to support fishing won't end up in the upper west region, but it will get to the right place, and this is very key. Aside this, for us to do justice to this job that geographers are doing, we need to understand the types of regions. And for the purpose of this conversation, we will limit ourselves to two main types of regions: formal and functional regions. And aside this typology, there are other ways you can also classify a region. So a region can also be classified based on the criteria used. It can be a single feature region. For example, if we classify a region based on the economic activity taking place, this is a fishing community, this is a fishing region, then it becomes a single feature region. However, if we want to delineate a region based on the level of development, we are going to use a multi-feature criteria, because according to Michael Todaro, development is a multidimensional concept. That means it consists of several variables. So in this case, we're going to use different variables like poverty, education, health status, and all that to define places into developed and underdeveloped region. Okay, so let's look at the first type of region today. We are going to have a closer look at formal region. And so for formal region, is based on the idea of homogeneity. That is, places are linked together because they share the same characteristics. So that characteristic can be a vegetation. So some parts of the western region of Ghana, other parts of the Ashanti region of Ghana are all classified as to be under the forest vegetation, because they all share similar types of trees, and the level of precipitation in these regions are also similar. So we can classify them as one region based on the vegetation characteristics. And so the key point is that formal regions are characterized by uniformity and homogeneity of one or more attributes. The second type of region is functional region, and this is also known as nodal, polarized, metropolitan, or heterogeneous region. And whereas formal region is linked by homogeneity, functional region is composed of a heterogeneous surface, different places, but they are linked together by the functions they perform. This is analogous to a bicycle wheel. So if in the case of a bicycle wheel, we can see the center, the links connecting them. So in the same vein, a functional region is composed of a centroid, or the main seat or the dominant area, which is linked to the peripheries or smaller units by certain activities, and that link or that interaction can be transport network. Accra is different from Kaswa, but because of the linkage, we find many people moving from Kaswa to Accra every day to work and to do other businesses. Accra and Kaswa is normally considered to be one. So when we are formulating policies, even though Kaswa is in the central region, but we often see it to be one, so we consider Kaswa when we are formulating policies for Accra. So when last month, when the government decided to lock down Accra because of the COVID-19 prevalence, even though Kaswa was in the central region, but Kaswa was the only place was the only place in the central region that was included in the lockdown. Whilst the government was locking down Accra, it also touched Kaswa, because even though Kaswa is in the central region formally, but functionally, Kaswa and Accra are linked together. So from there, we will briefly look at one of the techniques for delineating regions. And for today, we will touch one method for delineating former region. Then in subsequent videos, we will look at other methods. So if you are yet to subscribe to this page, you can pause and subscribe and hit the subscribe button, and afterwards also hit the bell down below, so that whenever we upload other cool videos, you'll never miss them. One of the sophisticated techniques used is the weighted index number, in which certain quantitative weights are assigned to the variables and homogeneous regions are delineated based on mean and standard deviation techniques. The weighted index method is quite similar to this. Supposing that I want to buy a new phone. Before I buy the phone, I already have my criteria for the phone that I will spend my money on. So let's suppose that my most important criterion is that the phone should be manufactured by the Apple company. It should be an iPhone. That's the most important criterion. Secondly, that phone should be blue. Blue is my favorite color. But I don't really place a lot of importance on the color. My main emphasis is on the brand. Once it is an iPhone, I'm likely to go for it. Supposing that I come across a Huawei phone, which is blue, and so it meets my second criterion. Meanwhile, I've placed more weight on the first criterion, that it should be an iPhone. In that case, I'm not likely to buy that phone. On the other hand, if I come across an iPhone which is black, but once it is an iPhone, the latest brand, why not? I will go for it. I hope we get a point. So in this case, when we are dealing with multiple features, let's say we want to define a place as a developed or an undeveloped region, we may see that certain criteria or variables are more important when it comes to defining development, and so we will place more weight on those variables we consider to be more important. And I'm coming to demonstrate that here. So in this hypothetical example, we have 12 territories or localities, and here the variables we are coming to work with are unemployment and per capita, but we are going to place more weight on unemployment, and afterwards we would use the output to define this territory into a developed or underdeveloped region. We are going to derive two regions out of this hypothetical territory. Okay, so another important point about this technique is that it is very subjective. The analyst has the leverage to use any method that makes sense to him to come out with the weight, and that also reveals one downside about this technique, because of this subjective nature, what one analyst may find to be logical or may find to be okay, another analyst may not find it to be okay. But the rule of thumb here is that even though you can use any weight to come about or to define your regions, but they should make sense. Once they make sense, you are good to go. So in this case, these are the ways we are assigning to delineate our region. So one, we have 2 by unemployment percent. So for every percentage of unemployment, we're going to multiply it by 2 in order to amplify the effects of unemployment in the delineation process. Then 1 per 50 Ghana cedis income for every 1,000 Ghana cedi. Let's demonstrate it here to make it easy for us to understand. Okay, so for territory A, its unemployment level was 2%, and according to our criteria or our weight, for every unemployment, we are going to add 2, we are going to multiply it by 2. So in that case, region A value, unemployment value will become 4, whilst region B multiplied by 2 also be 4, region C multiplied by 2 also be 4, but region D, area D or territory D value, which is 1, will become 2. So we'll repeat this process for all the territories, and from there we'll get into the second weight or the second criteria. And as for this one, this was how we are going to define it. So we stated that for every per capita income less than 1,000, which is less than 1,000 cedis by 50 Ghana cedi, is going to be represented by 1. So if a territory per capita income is less than 1,000 by 100, we are going to represent it by 2 because we are going to have 2 50s there. And if it's less than 1,000 by 150, we are going to represent it with 3 because we have 350 in 150. So let's get into it. So for territory A, its per capita income is 1,000. So we are not going to write 1 because it's not less than 1. We will only write 1 if it is less than 1,000 by 50. The same can be said of territory B, territory C. When it comes to territory D, its per capita income is 850, and that is less than 1,000 by 150. And in 150, we are going to find 3 50s in, and so we'll represent that by 3. So we can see it from the table 3. And when we get to territory E, 1,000, so we are not going to write anything because 1,000 is not less than 1,000, obviously. So we'll represent that with 0. And when we get to territory F, that is less than 1,000 by 3 50s, that is 150. So that will be represented by 3. And for territory G, its per capita income is 950, and that is less than 1,000 by 50. 150 is less than 1,000 by 50, and so we would represent territory G with 1. And we will do this for all the territories. And once we are done, we will just add these 2 columns, the column for 2 by percent unemployment and 1 per capita. We are going to add them, and that will give us the aggregate, which is represented in the second map down below. And as we can see, region A, B, D, E, G, and region H, as well as region C, value appear to be similar. So the only difference is just 1. So in this case, we're going to classify region A as a developed region, whilst region B will be classified as an underdeveloped region. And one may ask, how did I know that region A is the developed region instead of region B? So if you look at the technique, the formula, the procedure, we stated that for every unemployment, we would multiply its value or its percentage by 2. And unemployment is an indicator of underdevelopment. And so if you are having if a territory is having a higher score under unemployment, then that indicates underdevelopment. Then when we get to the second column, per capita income indicates development. So if a region is having higher per capita income, it signifies development. And in this case, we manipulated our formula such that if a region is having high per capita income, its value will be less. But if it is having, a territory is having low per capita income, its value will be high. So let's take region territory D, for example. D per capita income is 850 cedis, and that is lesser, and we represented it with 3 based on how we formulated our procedure. So in that case, when we get to the aggregate, regions which are not performing well, regions which are having low or high unemployment level, will have higher values under the aggregate, whilst regions which are having low per capita income will also have high aggregate. And in that case, when we look at the map below, regions which or territories which scored high numbers can be viewed as underdeveloped, whilst territories which scored smaller numbers can be seen to be developed. Alright, so that is the end of our discussion. Thank you so much for your time, and we will continue on our discussion in subsequent videos.